Hello and welcome back. In this video, I am going to explain the poem, The Walrus and the Carpenter from New Images Pearson textbook for grade 6. So let us begin. The sun was shining on the sea, shining with all his might. He did his very best to make the billows smooth and bright. And this was odd because it was the middle of the night. The moon was shining sulkily because she thought the sun had got no business to be there after the day was done. It's very rude of him, she said, to come and spoil the fun. So here you understand that it is night time and the sun was shining on the sea during the night. So there are few word meanings on each page which will help you understand the text here. So billows here means waves. Below, when they show the word here, it means that billows here means waves, but in real, there are different meanings for the word billows. So the sun made the waves look smooth and bright. And it was odd because it was the middle of the night. And the moon was shining sulkily because she thought the sun had no business to be there after the day was over because it was the time for moon to shine, not the sun, right? The sea was wet as wet could be. The sand was dry as dry. You could not see a cloud because no clouds was in the sky. No birds were flying overhead. There were no birds to fly. So during the night, the sea was wet, the sand was dry, and there was no birds to fly. The walrus and the carpenter were walking close at hand. They wept like anything to see such quantities of sand. If this was only cleared away, they said, it would be grand. If 7 maids with 7 mops swept it for half a year, do you suppose, the walrus said, that they could get the sand clear? I doubt it, said the carpenter, and shed a bitter tear. So the walrus and the carpenter are walking together and they are weeping like anything because after seeing such quantities of sand, and they are discussing whether if 7 maids with 7 mops can if are going to sweep it for half a year, can they get the sand cleared away? Oh, oysters, come and walk with us, the walrus did beseech. Beseech is begging. So, oh, oysters, come and walk with us, the walrus begged. A pleasant walk, a pleasant talk along the briny beach. We cannot do with more than 4 to give a hand to each. The eldest oyster looked at him, but never a word he said. The eldest oyster winked his eye and shook his heavy head, meaning to say that he did not choose to leave the oyster bed. So the eldest oyster was wise and he knew that the walrus and the carpenter are going to eat the oysters, and that's why the eldest oyster just winked and shook his heavy head, meaning to say that he wanted to stay in his oyster bed. But 4 young oysters hurried up, all eager for the treat. Their coats were brushed, their faces washed. Their shoes were clean and neat. And this was odd because they hadn't any feet. Let's move on. 4 other oysters followed them, and yet another 4, and thick and fast they came at last, and more and more and more, all hopping through the frothy waves and scrambling to the shore. So these young oysters don't think much. They just say, okay, they're only eager for the treat, and they never think that the oyster carpenter and the walrus are going to eat them up. So even the carpenter and walrus are tricking these oysters, right? The walrus and the carpenter walked on a mile or so, and then they rested on a rock conveniently low, and all the little oysters stood and waited in a row. So they walked for a mile, and walrus and the carpenter rested on a rock, and the little oysters stood in a row and waited. The time has come, the walrus said, to talk of many things, of shoes and ships and sealing wax, of cabbages and kings, and why the sea is boiling hot, and whether pigs have wings. So the walrus sat on the rock and said that the time has come to talk of different things like shoes, ships, sealing wax, whether pigs have wings, and so on. So the oysters say, "But wait a minute," the oysters cried, "before we have our chat. For some of us are out of breath, and all of us are fat." "No hurry," said the carpenter. They thanked him much for that. "A loaf of bread," the walrus said, "is what we chiefly need. Pepper and vinegar besides are very good indeed. Now if you are ready, oysters dear, we can begin to feed." "But not on us," the oysters cried, turning a little blue. "After such kindness, that would be a dismal thing to do." So the oysters have been tricked. They suddenly realize when the walrus says this small stanza over here: "Pepper and vinegar besides are very good indeed. And now if you're ready, the oyster dears, we can begin to feed." So after this stanza over here, the oysters realize that they have been tricked, and they say, "But not on us. After such kindness, that would be a dismal thing to do." Dismal is nothing but sad and horrible. "The night is fine," the walrus said. "Do you admire the view? It was so kind of you to come, and you are very nice." The carpenter said nothing, but cut us another slice. "I wish you were not quite so deaf. I'd have to ask you twice." "It seems a shame," the walrus said, "to play them such a trick, after we have brought them out so far and made them trot so quick." The carpenter said nothing, but the butters spread too thick. So the carpenter doesn't want to talk much. He just wanted to eat the oysters, but the oysters have left. So that's the main idea of these three stanzas here. "I weep for you," the walrus said. "I deeply sympathize." With sobs and tears, he sorted out those of largest size, holding his pocket handkerchief before his streaming eyes. So he began to cry and say, "I weep for you, I deeply sympathize." Streaming eyes is nothing but eyes filled with tears. "Oh, oysters," said the carpenter, "you've had a pleasant run. Shall we be trotting home again?" But answer came there none. And this was scarcely odd because they had eaten every one. So don't you think this is a nonsense poem? Yes. I hope you were able to understand this poem. See you soon. Thank you.